Good morning, everyone. My name is Alana Sage. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Lien In Webcast. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for everyone who's been on hold and waiting. I am going to go through a couple of quick housekeeping notes here. As most webinars, you should know that you are in listen-only mode, but if you have any questions, please use the questions panel on the side of the screen. We'll be taking questions throughout, and we've saved time at the end of the webinar today to really get into questions and answers. This is being recorded, and we will send this recording later this week. To take you through a quick agenda for today, we're going to begin with some industry news and updates by BCC Software Company President Chris Lien. He's going to go ahead and introduce our panelists today, and we're going to do a case study and review of the state of Colorado IDS system and the changes they've made over the last decade. And then again, as I mentioned, we've saved time for Q&A. So with no further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Chris Lien. Chris Lien is the president of BCC Software. His firsthand knowledge of the Postal Service regulations makes him one of the industry's utmost authorities on the mail entry roadmap changes. In addition to being our company president, he's also the elected immediate past chair of the Mailers Technology Advisory Committee, also known as MTAC. Chris, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So before we get into some of the the case study, and by the way, welcome everyone again to the session here. I'm going to introduce our guests in a moment. But I'm really excited about this particular web seminar today because we're going to talk about a case study. And it's all centered around workflow optimization and being prepared for changes that are looming ahead. And so we thought it might be good just to kind of quickly tee up some of the changes, some of the challenges, but certainly opportunities that we're seeing as we now prepare for moving into 2018. These include things such as the rate case or the price adjustments, first-class price increases. We know that right now, if you look at some of the details on this, and BCC, of course, has been tracking this since it was published and even beforehand when it was being discussed early as back in the summer, that we're looking at about a consumer price index capped increase of 1% to 3%. And again, it's going to vary based on different types of classes of mail. First class mail is going up to that 50 cents per piece. And so there's going to be some changes that are going to happen with that. And anytime the prices go up, it means an opportunity for the industry to respond accordingly by taking advantage of work share opportunities. And again, that's really put together by the workflow optimization that we'll talk about shortly. The other significant things in terms of 2018 as we move into that from this price adjustment is move update standards. We will be pivoting from a sample-based verification world where pieces were sampled, select group out of a particular mailing. They'd look at, the Postal Service would look at that, and then based on that sample set, would extrapolate an assessment, assessment to the entire mailing based on that particular sample set. We're going to do away with that and go with a census-based verification. Every single piece has to stand on its own, and that's particularly critical when we talk about the move update requirements. So beginning in March 2018, the industry is going to be receiving, hopefully not if we prepared correctly, but you'll be receiving an assessment based on the way your mail was prepared prior to that. So that first quarter of 2018, the Postal Service is going to be actively measuring how well the pieces are complying with that, and then you'll start to see some of that in your scorecards, which hopefully you've been looking at as well. Market dominant products, again, the Postal Service is continuing to look at some different ways to adjust on what they classify as market competitive and market dominant products. So we're watching that very closely with that as well. And we've got a whole take on that with our product manager. BCC Software has put together just kind of an idea on that. We've got a link here on the screen. I know we'll make that available as well for those of you that aren't able to click on the screen, but to be able to see more about that. And you'll be hearing more as we come into that as we're working and actively preparing for it. The other thing I want to talk about just briefly is the Board of Governors nominations. So President Trump did just nominate 3 individuals to serve on the Board of Governors. Right now, there are a maximum of 9 governors that can be appointed. There are currently no governors that are seated. So if you stop and think about it for a moment, we've got a $67 billion company in the form of the United States Postal Service without a board of directors. So we need to fill at least one of those seats. And the president has put forth 3 nominees. Tucker, Duncan, and Williams. Of those three, David Williams is probably the most familiar with the industry, having served prior as the Chief Postal Inspector for the Office of the Inspector General as sort of an oversight group with the Postal Service. So David Williams is well acquainted with the mailing industry, and I think certainly his ideas would be very welcome, and bringing to that table and provide guidance. All three of them would be able to provide some important guidance to the Postmaster General and the Deputy Postmaster General for future price adjustments, including promotions. So the promotions that we've been enjoying in 2017, 16, 15, and all the way back to 2014 have to be approved on an annual basis by the Board of Governors. And not having a governor seated right now means we can't have any approved promotions in 2018 yet. So having at least one of these three governors, these nominees, confirmed by the Senate quickly so that we can get them seated will enable us to begin the process of adding promotions. Note that promotions can be presented and approved anytime during a calendar year, so we could still see promotions sometime during 2018, but the sooner the better, because mailers, most likely mail owners, were preparing and assuming that they were going to continue to enjoy some of these discounts they were seeing with promotions, discounts of 2% or more, depending on how you were leveraging these to help offset costs. So we're anxious about that getting approved soon. The other thing that the clock has been ticking on is the Postal Regulatory Commission 10-year review. Now, when the law was passed in 2006, the Postal Accountability Enhancement Act, that was signed into law in December of 2006, it did require the postal, it used to be called the Postal Rate Commission, now the Postal Regulatory Commission, and as a regulator, they need to do a review every 10 years, just to make sure that the methodology for calculating pricing, the Consumer Price Index cap that's applied by class of mail, the authority that the Post Service has, the application of their monopoly on the mailbox, comporting with the law. So the PRC has to do this comprehensive review on the rate filing and processing and calculation system, and that's due this year. We anticipate that we may see it as soon as the end of November. It's certainly been something that the PRC has been actively working on. I had the opportunity of being at an event with Chairman Taub, Robert Taub, who was there, and he did talk about the constructs and the importance of the review, but did not give us an idea as to when exactly it would be published. But we do anticipate that soon, hopefully by the end of this month. And that changed the decision on that. I do not anticipate that affecting the proposed price adjustments for 2018, but it certainly could help shape what may continue into next year, discussions within Congress, particularly in the House of Representatives, around postal legislation. There is a bill that's active in the House that had been discussed, but sort of has been stalled since we had a change in the chair position there now that we have Chairman Gowdy heading up that particular House subcommittee. So we're going to wait and see what the results of that PRC recommendations are. That may affect postal legislation, and that could impact future price adjustments in 2019 and beyond. Finally, Irresistible Mail Award. This goes back to the promotions. The promotions are really critical for a lot of mailers, and it's actually critical for our industry. There's a lot of power in tying a high-touch piece of mail to high-tech technology, complementary technology that's strategically timed for communication and messages to enhance the overall value of the message and improve the response rate with that. So we're anticipating that these promotions will help drive irresistible mail as we go forward. And the Postal Service is going to tie something called informed delivery, which is scan mail pieces, to and then the arrival via an email. So you would see in an email every day, and I know I get mine, these mail piece images of what's arriving in my mailbox, but tying that as part of the Irresistible Mail Award. The Post Service definitely wants the industry to embrace this concept of high touch to high tech. And I know that many pioneers in the industry have been doing this to certain capacities. I'm bullish about the opportunities that I see ahead of us with this idea behind informed delivery, or really just digital complements to a physical mail piece, that physical piece being the foundation. And now that we are on the cusp of continuing to advance forward with mail tracking and strategically timing the deliverance of these pieces, we've got a great opportunity ahead of us, to be able to take advantage of high touch and high tech and multi-channel marketing. So again, a lot of things that are really shaping up for 2018: price adjustments, work share opportunities, change in legislation and governance with the Postal Service, and then this spotlight on high touch to high tech, all of that sets the frame for the necessity of enhanced workflow optimization. And that's why I'm excited about today's Lean In event, because it's all about discussing how to map your workflow and take advantage of what's going on to be able to get the maximum out of your investment. Before I introduce the speakers, I just wanted to share here with you from In-Plan Graphics, October 2017. So just last month, already we're discussing this. And the quote is, "The case for automation workflows is absolutely compelling. The touches have a high cost. The Key Point Intelligence InfoTrends 2017 study showed in U.S. Production Software Investment Outlook projects that 79% of print shop volume will be automated by 2019. So the question now for all of you is, how will you reach this level of automation, getting up to 79% of that automated? And here today, we've got some great speakers that I'm really thrilled that had the time to join us to talk about the advancements in application of technology, workflow, and how it's building into a vision that had been seen early on. I'm going to start first with Hani, and Hani Khalaf, I hope I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, President of Rakami. Hani, welcome to the webinar. I know your technology at Rakami has been instrumental in some of the things that we're going to talk about, and we're excited to have you as a partner.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. And the individual that really is going to guide us through a lot of the opportunity, the work-share optimization, Mike Lincoln, IDS Northern Regional Manager for Colorado State Printing. Just to share with you, Mike Lincoln currently serves as the Colorado State Printer within the state's Department of Personnel and Administration Division of Central Services Integrated Document Solutions Group. Now, as the Colorado State Printer, Mr. Lincoln oversees the Integrated Document Solutions, or the IDS team, with responsibility for graphic design, printing, mail, delivery, and dispatch operations for the state of Colorado. He's got over 30 years of experience in printing and printing in the industry, and combined with over 20 years in customer support and customer relations arena. He has served on advisory boards of several peer organizations, most recently as the In-Plan Mailers Association, IPMA's president through 2016. He also served as the president of the National Government Publishing Association, NGPA, and many other board positions. Mike, thank you for joining the webinar. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, gentlemen, it's great to have you here. And the first thing that I really want to start with, and Mike, I'm going to begin here with you. Now, we heard from your team and from you specifically back in, I think it was 2015. There was an article about Inkjet comes to Colorado, and it was about a vision that you had, this vision that sort of 10 years in the making, this idea of bringing high touch and high tech capability, inkjet capability to Colorado, and particularly in this case, it was with equipment from Ricoh, the InfoPrint 5000 MP, I believe, that would transform the capabilities of what you were looking to do, and that sort of began that workflow optimization. Could you kind of take us back maybe to the beginning? What were some of the driving factors on this vision that you saw? How did you see that enhancing IDS and the value that you're providing to the state of Colorado?
Sure, Chris. Well, and I'll try and make the history as brief as I can, but going back about 10 years, we saw an opportunity primarily driven by our largest customer, who is Human Services here in the state. And we have been their primary partner since 2003 for print. And we found a competency in what we did for them, which was this printing of correspondence. And as we looked into the future and trying to decide where we wanted to be, we want to leverage those competencies. And so the very first step in that process was to reach out to the state's IT printing group, who was managed by the IT group, and mainframe print. And we said, we can probably bring some efficiencies to this process, other than the fact they were printing about 15 miles away and shipping that printed product to us to go out in the mail. Bringing it in-house would expedite that process. And with competency that we have in print, we could probably add some efficiencies to their processes. So in 2008, we started on the project. 2009, we actually moved IT print to integrated document solutions. And a lot of the vision that we had in bringing efficiencies was realized within the first 5 to 6 months of that transition. With that process, we were really introduced to our first real variable data print job. And with that, we needed to get very good at handling data. We needed to understand what the customer's needs were, what the expectations were as far as getting the printed material out the door into the mail stream. And so we started doing some research, and that research included reaching out to peers in the industry who had already been doing this and finding out what worked for them, what didn't work for them, trying to avoid some pitfalls that maybe my peers had experienced, and see if we could expedite the process to get good at what we did. And through that process, we found our customers starting to respond, wanting to drive more correspondence printing to us. And so this journey into the realm of variable data printing and being a printer of correspondence really made sense to integrate document solutions. As we expanded in that area, we went back to our biggest customer, who was providing pre-composed PDFs to us. So this is human services. So the workflow we were getting from them was pre-composed PDF. And so honestly, it was easy print. They'd send us a PDF and we'd output it. We'd put it on the inserters and mail it out. We were using 3 to 9 barcodes back then to make sure that the right pages got into the right envelopes, but it was pretty basic. And as we saw this evolution, we wanted to really start adding value to what we could get out of the data. Enter our first ADF conversation, and once we understood what it meant to have an automated document factory, we started looking at what else was available to us. Dashboard integration, which is what Rackham brought to us, integration with BCC and automating some of the mail side of what we did, and really spending a lot of time understanding what it meant to go down this road. In 2015 is when we really embarked on the inkjet journey. We decided that because of customer need and them starting to talk about wanting to add color to, which was typically a monochrome job, we knew inkjet was the only way we could do it affordably. And so we looked at inkjet and made that decision to go with that technology, increased our throughput, add some value to the customer base. But at the same time, we were looking to increase the automation of the workflow. Enter Rackham, Solomar, BCC into this conversation. And how do we get it all tied together? And frankly, it was a heavy lift, super heavy lift actually, but with the partners that we brought to the table, it really helped us move forward and gain some efficiencies.
Excellent. So you really brought together a couple of different technologies, right? And this is all part of that vision, being able to take these PDFs. I know you're using some of the Solomar technology to bring in and extract that out. We've got variable imaging or variable printing and messaging with that, which incidentally I've seen a substantial increase lately as well. On a typical day, just even 24 months ago, BCC would be processing anywhere from 3,300 to 3,500 lists of names and addresses. We're well over 5,500 a day, and that's certainly not, unfortunately, not the result of mail volume increases. It's instead a reflection of the level of personalization and variable messaging that I think is critical to that. And then now adding in, Rackham's capability with that overall workflow optimization, I can see that's a critical part. Amy, let's turn to you for a minute and talk a little bit about that part of it, that overarching piece. What were some of the things that Rackham brought to the table to enhance the workflow and help Mike begin to see that vision?
Yeah, absolutely. So what the need was, or still is to be able to track the data that's coming in from inception all the way to the mail channel or even multi-channel delivery. So with that need, the platform was brought on to say, okay, let's collect all the data. So you have one modern platform to run your entire business. Let's collect all the data that's coming in from the FTP. Let's collect the data that's coming in from various number of channels and put it into that platform. Once it was ingested into the platform, the need for standardization begin. So we standardize the data input, we standardize the data output, and that's how we can plug into the BCC software, where all the data is going to run through the same process for BCC. The track and trace was enabled, so now you can track any of the mail pieces. And then the output channels was controlled as well. Because of the standard into the platform, now you have the ability to do piece level tracking. Now you have the ability to allow customers, which is the IDC customers, as well as your customer service reps, to log into that one platform to make decisions faster. And when they make decisions faster, it can go all the way through the print controller and then drag and drop the document into the queue management and track the piece level throughout the operation. So that was the need, which is the collecting of the data, the controlling of the composition, the outputting of the data, and figuring out what's the most optimal schedule and capacity planning that needs to happen. And finally, the reporting and the reconciliation that's needed for billing to feed into the MIS system.
Okay, so you touched on three of these key targets, right? And I know in looking at the sort of the article that was done before, and Mike, and conversations that we had with you, really it comes down to sort of these three areas that we see on the screen here with these slides. So address quality, right? A foundation of an address that is complete and that it's correct. It's got all the right pieces on there to be able to get it delivered to that particular location. But Mike, one of the challenges as a state entity, and we'll kind of walk through these three areas. As a state entity, you can get the address complete, you can get it correct, but the third that C of the 3C approach is current, getting the address current with change of address process. Now you've got a challenge, don't you, as a state agency for updating change of addresses for people?
We do. In most states and a lot of municipalities, and in some cases, certain areas of the banking industry will run into this same issue, which is when we send out correspondence, we actually need to mail to the address of record. So through the processes, we're able to identify, hey, the address of record is a bad address, or the address of record is an old address. And we still have to mail to that. And so with, as you talked about earlier, as the USPS is getting ready to start really going down to piece level examination of mail pieces, if you're sending out a correspondence to a bad address, and if you've applied discount postage to that piece and you know about it, you can actually start running some risk of losing either all or part of your discounts. And so what we've had to do is look at the workflow and say, how do we address this problem? Because the state does save a lot of money in pre-sort. However, because we have to send to the address of record, we still have to go out. So that has to go first class.
Okay. So you're using return codes, and I know that we've talked with our customers many times about your software is talking, are you listening? In this case, you're listening to the software, you're leveraging these return codes, and it sounds like you kind of bifurcated the workflow. I heard you saying that some pieces are going to go out first class mail, right? Because it's going to have to go to the address of record at a non-discounted rate, and then the other ones you're able to send those continue at the discount amount.
Correct. So what we're doing through the workflow automation is based on those codes that we get back. If it's a good address, we'll go ahead and update it. We'll apply, in some cases, the IMB in the print stream. But if it is something that is a questionable address or a bad address, we'll still run it down our sorter. It'll reject, and then we'll move that over and upgrade that postage.
Okay. Is there any opportunity in the future for communicating with the customer to get their approval on the address to be able to go back and do that change of address, or is that part of a future capability?
Well, what we're looking at, so because of what we do for the state of Colorado, we have so many different customers and so many different databases we've got to deal with. We actively communicate with the customers what the challenges are and provide options on how to address that. In some cases, we've actually recommended that they stop mailing the regular correspondence to those bad addresses, instead start sending a postcard. So you still have to mail to the address of record. So you send a postcard at a much lower piece rate, and you say, hey, we've noticed that the address that we have isn't correct, please update it. And we can use alternate means to communicate or reach out to that customer and see if we can get updated information. In some cases, we still have to send out the full correspondence. And in those cases, we mail. A lot of times, the counties will receive that return mail. They've got phone numbers. They've got alternate means of reaching out to the customer, and they'll reach out and see if they can obtain it. But it is a challenge, and it's really a challenge based on the type of customer that each one of our agencies has to deal with. So it can be a challenge.
Right. As you can see, Chris, the data is everywhere. So you got the data that's coming in from different clients, the demand is everywhere, and the platform gives you the ability to make decisions. It also gives you the ability to take actions on that data, and then it's real time. That's the biggest thing. It's real time, real data that's coming in, and then because you're making decisions on which one is going to be delivered, what address is going to be delivered, and all the actions that's coming in from BCC has to be stored. So you know that yes, the address has been corrected, but we mail into the old address. So you're storing that into a dashboard for the future, for accountability, and making decisions.
Yeah, no, that's and I'm glad that you brought that up there too, Haney, because that was sort of the thought behind the system. So Mike's got this challenge, address quality. He has to deliver to the address of record, and I've heard this before with other areas where there's legal restraint. But the value that's being brought forward here for Mike and his team is that BCC can identify which addresses are outdated or need some, a decision made with that. Rackamate provides the tools, the visibility, and then that capability of bifurcating that into different workflows. And then that gives now, Mike and his team an opportunity to be able to solve the problem, which is how do I keep my postage managed and controlled, stay compliant with the Postal Service, and move forward in getting that message out to the right recipient, right?
Absolutely. And because of the strong integration points, you can easily make a quick decision or take a very quick action anywhere or anytime to say, you know what, we will mail to the correct address this time, or here's what the actions I want to take, because it's just a click of a button to change the address from what BCC has provided.
So kind of a case by case. Yeah, Mike, coming back to do you apply that differently based on what areas that you work with?
Well, and I wasn't going to necessarily go down that road, but what I wanted to also dovetail off of Haney's point was that the information, the data is king. I mean, we've heard that, and it's real. But having the information available to us, especially because I'm a public entity, is being able to forecast budget. So we can actually drive behavioral changes based on the address quality. By going back to an agency and say, look, your postage spend first class because of bad addresses is $150,000 a year. You can cut that number in half by actively managing the way you accept addresses from your constituents. And so, address quality is really important to this process, especially in the transactional world. You need to be able to understand not only what data you have, but how you can then go back to the customer and help them understand it. And in the public sector, set budgets based off of that information.
Absolutely.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. Oftentimes for an implant mailer, it's just assumed, well, I've just got to take this address. But this address quality presents an opportunity for conversations, growth opportunities, and incremental value to what you're bringing to the organization, or maybe out to to one of your customers outside the organization, and just understanding, there are options, there's choices on being able to improve the address, and keep those postage discounts, and ensure that delivery of the piece.
Right.
Talking about delivery of the piece, Haney, you talked about mail tracking earlier, and I know that BCC Software's track and trace product is part of what's with this. And when I think of mail tracking, I really often think about sort of three pillars of the value proposition: accountability, visibility, and predictability of arrival. Haney, can you talk a little bit about the accountability, visibility, predictability as that's part of the solution overall?
Sure. Yep. It all starts with the incoming data file. So we are accountable to what has came in through different channels, FTP, email. So we track all the files, the data into the dashboard system. Once that gets started, then basically is the four pillar of any print and mail, right? So the four pillar is collection of the data, the composition of the data or re-engineering, the output, and then finally the reporting and reconciliation. So the collecting of the data is the accountability. Yes, we have received it. Yes, the clock has started. The SLA is going to get started. Yes, we know when is it due, and we know what product, what workflow is going to go through. Once that accountability starts or the clock starts, now you have visibility. So what does that mean by visibility? The PDF comes in, the AFP file comes in, the PCL file comes in, any data format. You can enable visibility throughout that platform, throughout the dashboard platform. How? Because you're enabling visibility on data reengineering and document reengineering. You're enabling visibility on the output channels that it's going to go to. You're also enabling visibility on the queue management. So now, once you enable the visibility from collecting the data, the output of the data, or the composition, and then the output. So with the output, you track where the document went, who touched the document, what operator have touched it, and the amount of time that it took from the beginning to the end of the document lifecycle. So that is a core workflow visibility. So once you enable the output and workflow visibility, you break it down, the system breaks it down into a standard of pieces or documents or accounts. And when you track it into accounts, now we have piece level tracking, PLT, all throughout the document lifecycle. So we can send it to the POs to create the file-based insertion, and we can track every single piece through the file insertion or even the email to give it back to feed it back to the dashboard. So it doesn't stop there, because what we could do now is with the IMB tracing and with BCC, we can track the document all the way through the delivery channel of the post office. So how do we do that? We track it through the IMB tracing. We let you know whether it received a certain location or did not, and feed it all back to the dashboard, so you can have that one platform where everybody's looking at it to make decisions, take actions anywhere and anytime. And with that, now you have the four core components: collecting of the data, the composition or reengineering, the output, and following report and reconciliation. So why is that important to be all in one platform? Because predictability happens. You can predict not only the arrival of the piece, but you can predict how is it going to get delivered, whether in the past has been delivered successfully or not, whether the address is corrected before in the past, so you have preference management on top of it, and you can make actions. And everybody talks about it in the industry now, which is AI, right? Intelligent decisions based on history and based on the future. So because you have all that data into one platform, you can make very intelligent decisions about when is the piece is going to arrive, how long it's going to take, what would it take to go through the automated process that has been set up, and how and is it going to take 4 hours, 5 hours, and then send out exceptions or alerts, notifying the control operators that a file is arriving, notifying the customer that you need to approve a piece or reject it, notifying the recipients that they're going to receive a piece of mail through through the post office. So all that can be as an add-on for enhancing the services in IDC.
Okay, so that's, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that you covered, Haney, and I guess I want to come back to Mike, and maybe I probably should have started at the beginning with this. Let's go back to sort of the basics, Mike. When you looked at your workflow optimization and you had this vision with this, let's talk a little bit about quality control and just being able to see these pieces. What were some of the changes and some of the challenges that you saw in part of this for, as Haney was talking about, just that visibility on that piece and being able to make sure that everything was flowing properly for your customers?
So I'll kind of go back to when we first embarked on the ADF solution. We knew that we wanted to automate the workflow. The very first job that we used with our ADF solution was the state's warrants. The state's partner that creates or that manages the accounting system for the state, they had pre-composed PDFs that would basically be a check. And so they were going to send us these PDFs, and we needed to print these checks. Each check had a different potential workflow associated with it. So some of them get mailed out, some get held for pickup, some get sent to an agency to hand directly to a vendor. There's, I believe, 11 different workflows associated just with warrant printing within the state. And so we needed to be able to, A, receive that information in, then data mine it, figure out the correct workflow, and then put it out onto the production floor, have it printed, have it set to the next point for distribution correctly. we also needed to be able to reference that information, because if we sent something out and it was supposed to be held for pickup, we needed to be able to go back and look into the workflow to understand how the error occurred. So from a quality control standpoint, visibly being able to see not only the correspondence itself, but then looking at the scripts and the workflows to understand how it worked through the system was important to us. What we found is that it gave us higher visibility into the production flow of the job, and gave us better control we had never had before. So that was one key piece. And then what triggered the need for what I refer to as phase 2 of ADF implementation, which is the dashboard, which is the address quality integration. That piece was driven by our largest customer, who had a problem with an important set of correspondence that were going to folks who needed to renew their food stamp benefit. And the county in which the error occurred, several people came and said, hey, our food stamp stopped and we never got our renewal notice. Well, the finger came right back to us and said, well, you guys didn't mail it. Well, we had a very rudimentary tracking process internally, but we were able to demonstrate that, yes, it was printed, yes, it was mailed, yes, it made it down the sorter, but we lost the ability to tell our customer that it's at the post office now. And that's where the BCC solution really comes in with track and trace, being able to say, okay, now because of the IMB, we can tell you that that piece is at the post office. And with the dashboard integration, we've given our customer the ability, rather than pick up the phone and call us, if they have a question, they can log into the dashboard and they can actually see the piece themselves. And so that integration is huge, and it helps the customer understand from a quality control perspective that we do care. And as a matter of fact, we care beyond most other vendors to hand data back to the customer to say, look, here's the information. And if there's a problem, we're here to help you resolve that problem.
Right. No, that's great, Mike. And I'm glad you touched on, two of those important parts of it, right? The accountability, being able to demonstrate to your customer, hey, we've done our job, we've inducted this into the Postal Service, giving them access and transparency to the visibility, where is that piece now? And then I think that third piece that is still continuing to evolve, we've had some early adopters with the IMB tracing program with the Postal Service for doing predictive arrival. Haney, you talked about that earlier. Now as we pivot into informed visibility, the Postal Service expands out the data and adding into this what we'll call logical scan events, where we know what piece was in what tray, and this is a critical part, Mike and Haney, of what has been built here as part of your vision, Mike. Being able to see, we know from the quality control that Chris Lien's piece was in this tray, that tray was on this pallet, and we inducted that pallet at this entry point with the Postal Service. So we know that that piece is at these locations as that pallet is being scanned. So informed visibility is going to give us a lot more insight into where those pieces are, and it should give us that opportunity, that foundation for some of the predictability of arrival, so that customers can stay in touch with that. Mike, I would imagine that managing customer expectations in advance is an important part of what your team does. Is that correct?
That is correct. And being somewhat predictive of what their challenges may be before they even realize that the challenge is important. I think that's where, as subject matter experts in our industry, we need to be able to bring that information to them and say, look, this isn't a problem today, but in 12 months, 18 months, it could be one. And so let's help you address this before you actually get to a point where we have to respond to a bad problem. Let's be proactive about it.
Right. That's a great point. It just made me think of, and we're going to kind of pivot into a bit about the team and how to expand people's capabilities. So we talked earlier about address quality, and now how you've been able to become sort of a data detective, right? Being able to sleuth in address quality issues, identify those areas for improvement to enhance the the overall message and ensure that we've got the right piece going to the right person at the right time. We've got the enhanced quality control and that visibility end to end that will allow us to see when was that piece created, where was it created, what container it was in, how was it nested, where is it at with the Postal Service, when is it going to arrive. And so that full visibility, the knowledge of postal, that really helps, kind of sharpen people's capabilities and knowledge. And let me bridge into that workflow optimization. Mike, I know when we chatted earlier, you were sharing with me about how this automated workflow is not only enhancing the ability for your customers and the services you provide, it's providing a benefit to your employees as well.
It is. Being able to track production on the floor is important.
Right.
We are on the threshold of adding large monitors to the production floor, and we'll probably be doing this in the next 4 weeks. So we will actually display on the production floor a particular job and whether or not it's at risk of missing an SLA. The production staff will be able to see what's coming up. Do they need to, move from one station to another to make sure that the work is moving through the shop properly? But even further upstream, for the production schedulers within the shop to be able to see what's sitting on the floor, and we're integrating not only the transactional information and transactional print that we're doing, but we are also in some cases still a traditional in-plant copy center. And so what we need to do is balance our resources in order to make sure that we meet all of the expectations of our customers. And so being able to see all this information, and again, we're coming back to data. Data is king. Being able to access that data and kind of understand how it impacts the production floor and the work schedule is really important.
Yeah. So, yeah, Haney, can you talk a little bit about some of the dashboards and the data and the feedback that you bring as well as the ways that you're enhancing in that?
Yep. So what Mike was saying, so the data is king, and if you have it all in one platform, then adding plugins to that data is very easy, because what you essentially do is create standard inputs and standard outputs. Once that happens, then the biggest thing that you can benefit from is auditing, right? So you're auditing a piece, and where did it go in that workflow? So if anything would have happened, you know who touched it, you know where it went, you know how long it went there, you know what queue it went to, or a printer, or what device it went to, all the way through the mail stream. With that, you added an extra layer, which is the security. At any point, you can control access to that data. You can control access to viewing of the document. And not only that, you can ensure your customers that accessing the database, accessing data, accessing the output channels is all controlled by the software. And when it's controlled by the software, then of course all the audit trails is behind it. So imagine you have one platform to manage all the data. Now reprint becomes really easy, because reprint will become just looking up a record, sending it through the process again, and then sending it to the printer. Not only reprint, but the audit trail reconciliation process. How many pieces went out in the mail? The billing process becomes very standard approach process. What Mike was discussing, the operational view, which is the ability to put operational monitor in every single station to tell them that you have 25 operations is going to be running this today. You have 40 operations. So now you have the insert operators can predict what's coming up. They have the print operators can predict what's coming up. Not only that, but the digital operational view, which means is your systems capable of receiving that data, and can they crank that data in time to be able to send it to the print channel? So we give you that kind of control of visibility on the operational level. So activity-based operation is a critical key to the whole process.
Excellent. Okay, and so again, that's all enhances managing customer expectations. And Mike, I'm glad that we touched on expanding and educating and training the staff on the new process, because oftentimes what I hear when we talk about automating workflow operations is people are worried about their job, right? They're worried about what role are they going to have with the company. But you're finding that instead it presents an opportunity for personal growth and development.
Absolutely. a lot of shops, and not knowing who our attendees are right now and who I'm talking to, but I'm sure there's a lot of implants out there that are in the same boat we are, which is we've got some staff that have been around for a while, and they may have skills that aren't necessarily quote unquote technical in nature. However, they're the best machine operators you've ever seen,
Right.
Whether they're an inserter operator, a copy operator, press operator, regardless of what it is. What we have found is that with the advances in technology, that we've found opportunity to provide professional development to some staff that may have otherwise not had access to learning a more technical skill. Sometimes it's embraced, sometimes it's not.
Right.
But the reality is that the automation doesn't necessarily replace people. What it does is it makes you better at what you do. And, those people who embrace that philosophy, I think, have, a very promising future in the print industry. I don't know how many times I've heard it, your industry is dying, print's dead. Well, I can tell you that the volume that we are seeing today is probably double, if not triple, what it was 10 years ago. So the volume isn't going down. We've identified the transactional space as a place we want to be. And, the reality is that it's a growing industry for us. It's not a tapering industry like others may think it is. Offset printing may be a little bit less, but if you can marry transactional information with offset, then there's a future there too. So back to your question, yes, we have found great opportunity in professional growth as we've added technology to what we do.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing it here at BCC, as well, right? With the employees, some of the new staff that we've added on, they want to find opportunities to help customers. They're always looking for that challenge, continuing to find new ways to apply the data. And your point's absolutely valid. We're seeing, this deluge of data, if you will, that's been coming to us, not just in the mail tracking, but the access to it has never been greater before. One of the strategic visions for BCC that we continue to build out is expanding the type of data and the access to the data that we offer with our software and through our partnership, because we know there's value in that. We know that mail is changing and it's evolving, and it's still the greatest opportunity for communicating and attracting new customers, retaining customers. With that high touch part, Direct Marketing Association continually talks about the greater than 5% response rate, and all your digital channels, as much as people are seeing that combined, don't come close to that. They're not even breaking 1%. So having mail, having that direct communication, that physical part, that's a key part of it. Because if all you're going to do is continue the same thing that you've been doing, you're not going to grow. You're not going to be able to take advantage of it. And both you gentlemen have been saying, and I agree with you, data is king. Understanding the data, cleansing the data, leveraging the data, reporting the data, all of that together is a key part. And Haney, I know that's a large part of that workflow optimization that you brought to the table here from Rackham.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that we all know is there's a lot more communication. There's a lot more devices in the industry that is just spitting out tremendous amount of data. And the more that you add a dashboard to be able to manage that content, the better communication or communicator you're going to become. So what the shift is that a lot of the employees that are using manual processes to track work or manual spreadsheet to be able to figure out the capacity planning, they're using a platform now, and they're discovering more hidden opportunities. So they can find business areas that they can enhance. They can find opportunities in the process. So their work is quickly shifting from let's use a platform to help us manage the business versus what's happening today in the industry where the business is managing the people. So it's a big shift because now you're using the data and the platform to help manage the business and manage the expectations from end to end. But not only that, with that platform, now you have a team that works better together. Right? So you have a team that can have discussions. You don't have n numbers of systems out there. You have one platform that everybody's looking at and looking at the same kind of story from end to end. and instead of looking at a production dashboard versus a inserter dashboard versus looking at the dashboard, you have one area where you can see everything anywhere and take actions on it in real time.
Yep, a single source of truth. I love it. That's a great point. So in our remaining time here, Mike, I want to go back to you, and you touched on it. What I've talked about before, this vision that you've had. It's been a long time that you've been working on this. You've had several phases. You talked about phase 1 and then phase 2, and now we've pivoted into this new capability. So for those of you that are listening today on the webinar, what are some suggestions, Mike, that you can bring? And I know we've got a couple of bullets here on the screen, but what are some things that you can share with the audience about how to get started, how to begin a process of automating the workflow?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand your current customer's needs. We spend a lot of time with our largest customers understanding what their pain points were. And in some cases, honestly, those pain points were created by things that we did. A lot of times, though, the customer wouldn't share that information. They just thought that was the way it worked. So really understanding what your customer's pain points are, I think, is the best place to start. And then once you have an idea of what your key stakeholders need, then start looking at the operation. Where can you apply some Lien principles? There's some low-hanging fruit that I think can be easily addressed, but in other cases, especially in our case, it's a journey. I think the part that really kicked it off is when we decided that transactional correspondence printing is where we wanted to be in the future. Really locking in on that objective helped us create a path to what I would call is pretty good success today.
Right.
But I'll be honest with you, the reality of doing it on your own is pretty tough. And I think I mentioned it earlier that if it weren't for talking to my peers, understanding what their operational challenges were in executing on some of these strategies, it would have made it much more difficult. So being able to have experts in the industry, whether they're vendors, whether they're peers, other in-plant managers, I think that's key. And the information's out there. And I remember when Haney and I first met and started talking about what it was going to take. I mean, we spent better part of 2 or 3 days, Haney, whiteboarding our processes. And through that process, we uncovered things that we hadn't really thought about. So it's not something you just flip the switch and say, we're going to do this. It's a journey, and you got to do your homework, but in that process, you've got to engage resources in order to really understand what you're trying to do.
Right. So really sitting down, mapping it all out. I know that it sounds a lot like some of the Lean Six Sigma principles that we hear a lot with that, but it should really just, I like your point. Start first with your customers, understand what the goals and the needs for your customers, then map out your current workflow, look at areas where you've got some inefficiencies, opportunities to grow. Haney, I know that you had spent that time with Mike. How important is it to get a technology provider like Rackham involved in the process? How early can you be too early in it? Do you want to wait and put this in place first? What's your thoughts on that process looking back?
It's really never too early. What we really help you do is map out all the tools that you have in place. And then by doing that, by mapping out the tools, then you're basically eliminating the island of automation that most companies have or exist. So we begin by combining all departments, production, operation, accounting, all into one room and figure out what tools do they use today to be able to manage the business. And that's when you figure out, okay, well, we need to carry on the Lean Six Sigma operation to say, how can we streamline that process? How can we create some standardization? How can we click a button to do invoicing? So you never, it's never too late to get started on, let's create some optimal processes, and let's figure out all the tools that you have in place today that could be replaced with one platform to manage all. So this is the key. Today's technology, today's platform is much, much stronger with integration. You have BCC that provides you all kind of API to get data in and out of it. Why not leverage that versus a manual operation of calling the process? Right. So we help you with mapping out what can the software platform do to help you with the optimization.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, and then finally, Mike, I love the point that you made about getting involved in your network, right? So the Implant Mailers Association, maybe your Postal Customer Council, a local type of event, attending some of the events, the print show that hopefully many people had a chance to kind of get to, last month or back in early September. So there's a lot of different venues, and of course your software providers, right? BCC software with today's web seminar, with all of the other ways that we try to communicate and educate our customers. It's a great way to start and make sure that you're not doing this alone. You've got a team of experts that want to help you, and so we're available to do that. So we've got a few minutes left here for some questions. Alana, I'm going to turn it back to you to start queuing up some of the questions.
Terrific. Thanks so much, gentlemen. So I'm going to start with a question from Megan. She had a question about track and trace. Chris, can you talk a little bit about how someone can add track and trace? We have a couple different ways and a couple different versions of track and trace. So would you be able to talk about BCC's track and trace options? So
the track and trace solutions that we have with BCC, you can access that directly through the software. It gives you the opportunity to track pieces, and you can, you're using our mailer ID that gets that information from the Postal Service. We're tracking millions of pieces, billions of pieces as it comes through, and provisioning that to our customers. That's continuing to be enhanced. I mentioned before that informed our IMB tracing is moving into form delivery. So you can access it through the software. You can access it out of the software if you'd like. You can get the dashboard reports directly to you. You can also get the dashboard visible, on the web with it reskinned, if you will, so that it's a personalized dashboard. Mike had mentioned earlier about just having the customers go in and take a look at, where their pieces are on their own. So there's an opportunity for growth with that, and then we're tracking not just the actual Intelligent Mail barcode that's printed on the piece. We give you the opportunity to track relevant information that's not printed on the outside of the piece that sort of shepherds along with that. So that way, for example, if it's a customer ID, that may not be part of what that Intelligent Mail barcode is constructed, or those 5 pieces of data that's baked in the barcode. It could be a customer number or something that's relevant to the customer, so that when they're searching on that number, we can correlate that to where the piece is. So I would check with customer support or work with one of our partners to be able to give you some more information on that. But getting access to track and trace is really as easy as just accessing right from within the software.
You can also purchase it as a standalone through some of our data services.
Correct.
And it can be purchased in a couple different ways. It can be by credits, and we have a couple different volumes.
Yep, and you can also do a flat rate approach with that as well. Thanks.
You're welcome. So that was one of the questions that came in. Mike, this question is for you, and this goes back to when you and I sat down a couple months ago. One of the people that was really a motivator for this project was one of your employees, Chris. And I thought Chris had a lot of really good feedback, and I was hoping maybe you could share with the audience in our last couple of minutes here, as someone who's a real utilizer of this program, what some of Chris's first thoughts about when this program went online were.
Well, the previous software we had, it was good. However, when Chris got a hold of BCC, and I'm using his words, he found the processing speed much higher. The data that was coming back was far more usable. So he had, and I'm going to say he can be a tough sell sometimes, but when he came back and said, you know what, I really like how things are flowing through the system, he liked the integration. We're still growing with it. It's still relatively fresh for us, and he's finding different ways to leverage what the system can provide back to us. And I think when we talk about leveraging, what we can do with the processes, that adds value back to our customer base. So as we dissect data, understand what it's giving us, we have the ability to go back to our customers and say, this is what we're seeing. This is the trend we're seeing in your bad addresses, or you've got a certain way of abbreviating things that isn't USPS standard. Let us help you find a way to increase that efficiency on your side. I think, again, I mentioned it earlier, being subject matter expertise or experts in the things that we do helps our customers gain trust in what we do for them. And I can't stress that enough. So with the software partners that we have, being able to add additional levels of trust in what we're giving back to the customers is really important.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think that I'm getting the signal here that we're at the end of our hour. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up today. Gentlemen, I want to thank you. Mike, thank you so much for sharing the information about this and giving some tips here at the end of how some people can get started. Thank you very much, Mike.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And Haney, thank you for the continued partnership and the technology that you brought to the table here to enhance the overall process. Being involved early on, making sure that we're continuing on with this journey. I know Mike has shared before it. It's never really done, right? You're continually enhancing it, but the opportunities presented there for future growth. Haney, thank you. Any final comments from you?
No, thank you. So I really enjoyed the partnership and continue on to grow with it. So thanks, Mike.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you, gentlemen, for your time today. Thank you all for attending today's web seminar. Stay tuned for more Lean In events. We'll let you know on that, and continue to visit bccsoftware.com for the latest news about the price adjustments in 2018, the Board of Governors appointments, and hopeful soon confirmation from the Senate, and the opportunities to enhance mail with digital complementary messaging and that high-touch to high-tech capability in this expanding, exciting multi-channel world. Take care, everyone, and hope to talk to you soon.